Hello, everybody, and welcome to the crowdcast with Dr. Judith Orloff on empaths are most likely futurists. So what I wanted to start with was for those of you who have not been to a World Future Society crowdcast before, is that a lot of times we talk about visionary entrepreneurs, or we'll talk about strategic foresight, or we'll talk about methodologies as it relates to looking at the future, as well as visions of the future. But one of the things that struck me after reading Dr. Orloff's book was that I found that I saw myself as an empath, and that I wanted to talk to her about a theory that I had about empaths and futurists. So I went and met with her, and we talked about, is it possible that empaths are, or futurists are civilization level scale empaths and are feeling something at a much larger level? And was there more to this just besides just the methodologies and the strategicness and connecting dots? What else was there? And so I brought that to Judith. And Judith, what was your first thought when I came in and said, could futurists be civilization scale empaths?
Oh, it made perfect sense, because empathy is the ability to feel what's going on in other people, in the environment, with the earth, changes in the atmosphere. It's a sensitivity of being open. Being an empath is a little bit more intense than that. On the empathy spectrum, it's very high up, meaning that empaths have a high degree of empathy and can feel so much. And because of this ability to intuit and feel, we can be intimately connected to the future, and how that future will manifest in terms of what is created. Because if you take the opposite extreme, where you have a narcissist, and we have plenty of those right now in our world, narcissists, full-blown narcissists, have empathy deficient disorder. And so they don't have empathy as we know it. So they're not operating with the ability to feel and know what's happening for the best possible future. It's just zero. With a full-fledged narcissist, you don't really get that. And so empaths and empathy is a trait, I believe, that will save the world, and that is essential in futurists, because you have to be able to sense the well-being of the earth and the well-being of civilization, and on a deep level what that means.
So, Dr. Orloff, you are a psychiatrist, and this is not normal psychiatrist speak. What, in your opinion, is happening currently in the psychiatric field, because that is where you've been trained as a doctor? And in your book, you talk about empaths being misdiagnosed with something like depression or anxiety or other things like that, and not necessarily getting to know the person. What's happening, in your opinion, in the current psychiatric psychology therapy field that's not working?
Well, I was trained at USC in California, which was a county hospital, and I got tremendous training at USC. And then I did my psychiatric residency at UCLA and also the VA hospital. And the main training that I got was biological training, meaning I learned how to prescribe medications, and I learned the biological correlates of human behavior. And so the field of psychiatry has gone a lot in that direction, in terms of just prescribing meds for you if you're depressed, if you're anxious. With children, it's, all over the place, prescribing for, so many diagnoses. So what's happening to the field is that getting more intellectual, more linear, more science-based, which science-based is fantastic. The only thing is the soul is being taken out of psychiatry. And so many psychiatrists don't even do one-to-one psychotherapy anymore. You just come in, present a symptom, you get a medication, you leave after 15 minutes, and you come back in a month or two. And so empathy and being an empath is almost the exact opposite of that. Except as a psychiatrist, I integrate all my traditional training and everything I've learned about the human body and the human psyche, along with a deeper appreciation of empathy and intuition, and even one's contact to their own spirituality, whatever that might be. Because the future needs to have people who can feel and connect to other human beings. The human family is one family. Empaths know that. It's not anything to even discuss. We can feel. People with empathy know how connected we are. No one is better than anyone else. We're all on the same level. We're all one family. We're in crisis now, and we need to come together as empathic, loving people who can sense, most of all, the well-being of the earth and its inhabitants.
Now, I know many of you probably have questions for Dr. Orloff. I do want to say that at 1:30 I will switch from myself to you guys and your questions. So as we continue to talk, if something sparks your interest, feel free to put that in the Ask a Question section so that I can go to that when we go to 1:30. Okay, so biological functions versus the actual individual within the field. One of the things that the World Future Society looks at is the top health threats: social isolation, depression, anxiety, obesity, addiction. All of these things, are these empaths, or what's happening as it relates, in your opinion? I could give mine, but you're the expert in the chair today. What is the reason that this is occurring in terms of this epidemic?
Well, there are many reasons why that's happening, but from an empathic point of view, what I'm seeing is that good-hearted, caring people are getting overloaded by all the stress of the world and the inundation and with hatred and lack of sensitivity and coarseness and a lack of integration with the mind, body, and spirit. And so they're getting exhausted. I have patients coming to me exhausted, anxious, depressed, diagnosed by a traditional psychiatrist as major depression, general anxiety disorder, chronic fatigue. And so there's so many empaths who are open to everything, are on compassion burnout, getting overloaded. A lot of them don't even know they're empaths. And I just want to say, what is an empath? An empath is somebody who has been called, quote, overly sensitive all their life in a derogatory way. They're very connected to nature and the earth. They tend to need a lot of alone time and don't have the same filters that other people have when stimulation is coming in. They tend to get overstimulated. And so I'm an empath, and that's why I wrote the Empath Survival Guide, to share the techniques that I use in my own life as a psychiatrist and as a woman, how to not absorb the stress of the world and maintain my empathy and be able to function in a way where I can contribute to changing the world without getting burnt out. But empaths need to develop skills. Empaths often get drained by noise, smells, and excessive talking. They replenish when they're alone. They get overwhelmed in crowds. They're often very creative and intuitive, but in the workplace or in a business environment, they tend to get overwhelmed by the noise, by the chaos, by the politics. And so they need take special care of themselves so they could function in the world and change things. I mean, that's the most important thing. Because the empaths that come to me as a psychiatrist, they're burnt out. And they need help in centering themselves, in bringing their energy back, in feeling better, and having skills how not to absorb the energy of the world or the energy vampires who might be in the workplace, the people who are just sucking you dry and you don't know what to do about it. So empaths need skills. Once they have skills, they can use their intuition and their heart and their loving kindness to change the world, change the business environment. I mean, this is a solution. You know, the saying is the meek will inherit the earth, and the meek isn't the accurate translation, is the sensitive will inherit the earth. And I truly believe that. And empathy, we need to strengthen that in every field that we're in. We need to strengthen that and bring that as a primary quality in terms of how we interrelate with our communities and the world.
One of the things that, in terms of what your work has done for the future community is that futurists need to be co-creating the future together. Everybody at the World Future Society wants to have more purpose, wants to be used, wants to have their work be meaningful, wants to contribute. But if we're not well ourselves, it's going to be hard to come together and actually co-create this. So a lot of times I'm thinking, and we talked about this as a foundational piece of the World Future Society membership, is to make sure that everybody is doing okay and making sure that everybody is at their best so that they're able to actually co-create together and actually work on their things relating to the future. Is that, in terms of a way to help with membership, or all the members of the World Future Society, is that something that you would recommend that they need? What would you prescribe us?
I prescribe a lot of self-care. My new book that's coming out is about thriving as an empath, and it's tips for self-care each day. And each day, it's important that you do that, because physical health, emotional health, spiritual health, and financial health are all related. And so if you have the finances to, let's say, donate to something or help a cause, how do you know which cause to give to? How do you know what? You have to tune into yourself and your empathy to feel a connection. This isn't just an intellectual endeavor. It can never just be about the mind anymore. As wonderful and analytic as the mind is, it has to be the mind-heart connection. It has to be empathy. It has to be intuition as part of your decision-making. Because if it isn't, if you're just a disembodied head and you're making decisions just with the analytic mind, that's not enough anymore. We need to really feel what we're doing. We really need to tune in to what is best, truly intuitively best for all of us as on the planet, and be able to tune into the collective. And the minute you see the whole dynamic is us versus them, you're in your head. Because if you feel empathy and you feel intuition, it is never us versus them. It's always us. We're on this planet with our family, and we have to learn how to get along, which is so hard for people, obviously. Even get along, one-to-one in a relationship, in a couple. It's so hard. It takes so much, to really find peace and harmony in individual relationships, which I encourage everyone to aim for. And how to bring that to the world, and how not to be a burnout futurist who's trying to help the world. You want to be a futurist who's on a path, somebody who is treating yourself well with self-compassion, developing your empathy as a key piece to your decision-making, and then being able to give to others in a very abundant way with the knowledge that we are connected to the earth. This is not something separate. When we hurt the earth, we hurt our bodies. We're connected. And that connectivity comes from an empathic connection. It doesn't come from the mind. You might know it, but when you feel it, it makes it so much more real and so much more imminent, that what we're doing is affecting us on every level. And so that's why empathy is the missing piece, and I feel so strongly about it. As futurists, to develop your empathy, bring it in businesses, bring it in the workplace, bring it in the government, bring it everywhere. My fantasy and my dream is to bring empath in the rooms where all the decisions are made. So it's not just analytic minds or power-hungry people who have no idea what their heart is. That's just not going to work anymore. We'll just be destroyed, if we continue that path. But if we open up our empathy, we develop it more and more. If you value it in yourself, rather than you thinking you're weak or you're a sissy or you're a crybaby and you need to be stronger, what I'm suggesting is being sensitive and strong. to embody both traits in men and in women. We both have to do this. It's not just about, power hungry, money building tactics. No, it's about using your money for the good, for the best possible reasons. Because we're all going to be gone. We're not going to stay on this planet indefinitely, but you want to use your resources to create the most good possible. And you can know that through intuition and empathy. And Julie, as you said, it starts with how you treat yourself. Because if you don't treat yourself well, if you're beating yourself up in your mind all the time, it's much harder to be an empowered activist. Much harder. Your empowerment will be diminished. And I come from a Taoist spiritual path, which is very connected to nature and meditation. And, I've been told that everybody, beats themselves up a lot. But if we beat ourselves up a little bit less each day, that's progress. So everyone out there, really believe in the baby steps, but work towards developing your sensitivities, not shutting off, not becoming steely and hard and unfeeling and uncaring because you're so overwhelmed. You want to deal with your overwhelm with meditation, with exercise, with being in nature, with learning how to set clear boundaries and that no is a complete sentence. You don't have to overhelp everyone in need. And every time you see, people on the street who are suffering, you don't have to give your heart and soul, to the pain that they're feeling. You could send them, a good wish, positive energy, or do something, to help the situation. But to take the pain and suffering of the world on into your own body will not leave you any resources to be a futurist who's empowered. So it's a balance. It's a balance of empathy and feeling, and then knowing when not to take on the angst of the world. You see that this is a great conversation to have, because I know people have a lot of opinions about it, that they feel unless they martyr themselves, or give, their last ounce of energy, they're not being compassionate. And I disagree with that. I think compassion comes from taking care of yourself so you could be in good shape to help others. I have people all the time asking me for help. All the time. I mean, they don't even know I'm a psychiatrist. I'm in the airport, I'm here, I'm there. People flock to me and ask me for help. And if I tried to help all these people, I would be a wreck. I have to say, when I'm not in my office treating patients, or when I'm not with a friend in distress who needs me, I'm sorry, this is my alone time. I can't really discuss this at this time. To be able to set limits and boundaries so you can maintain your own energy and have something to give when it really counts. You can't just give yourself away. And finding that balance as an empath, as a sensitive, loving, caring person is key.
So let me ask you a quick question before we head to everybody else's questions here. I had somebody come up to me, and I we did a meetup recently in the Washington, D.C. area. And one of the members, a new member, came up to me, and we had like some discussion points on the table to talk about. And one of them was something about empaths. And they said, is the World Future Society becoming like, what is that? As if it was some, something they couldn't understand. It was like, that doesn't sound like the future. Why are you bringing that up? In terms of mind, body, or heart and spirit, or all of those connections, how do you, in a world where people are disconnected from that, how would you respond to somebody who's on the fence about empaths and the future, and in terms of bringing those skill sets that you're talking about to who they are? Is it a cognitive bias of the word, or what's happening there?
Well, it might be. You can use the word empathy and see if they relate in the same way, that the importance of developing empathy, because empath is just a word. In other words to describe it are people who are highly empathic or with very strong empathy. You can fill in the blank. You don't have to use the word empath. But the whole idea is that people on the empathic spectrum need to develop the empathy that they have. And so I wouldn't get into squabbles about language, but I would more talk about the points you're trying to, express, and tell them that you don't have to use that, term, but you can use the word empathy and develop that and be caring for your fellow human.
Yeah, I think empaths have been or empathy has been a word that's been a part of the futurist mindset for some time. And getting your book, The Survival Guide for Empaths, I felt was incredibly helpful. And I hope that all of you are getting a ton of benefit out of hearing from Dr. Orloff. And what we're going to do in the community is we're going to be bringing some of her work and her workshops and her teachings, as well as how to get access to her books, as well as her book tour and all of that. So if this is something that's resonating with you, you are definitely going to get more of this. I'm very interested to see how many people are interested in additional stuff. I could see the comments here on the side that people are enjoying themselves. So I'm now going to switch to the questions. Judith, are you ready?
Yep, ready.
Okay. This one is from Marin Kotler. She says, we have a mismatch with all this digital products, AI, artificial intelligence coming up. On the other side, people are more and more longing for social connection. What tools can help to bridge the gap? Are future scenarios visions one?
Yes, you must envision the future in a very positive way. You must not go to the negative mindset that a lot of people have, or negative stories about AI. They're warnings, and with anything else, we need to have balance. But if we bring into the development of all this technology, empathy and heart and the correct motivations, then it's more likely to be used in a beautiful way. It doesn't have to be abused. And so you can be a part of that shift of the digital technology into the future, coming from an empathic place and realizing, the limitations of AI and other of the things that you mentioned, but also perhaps there's a goodness in that too. And if you have the right people crafting the messaging and the purpose of whatever we're doing, if it's coming from the best possible place, it's more likely going to turn out in a good way. The nature of human beings, is that, there's always going to be difficulties. There are always going to be those people that don't use it for the good. It's just, there's good and not so good people around. And the more you can be aware of yourself and your own motivations and aim towards the consciousness of empathy, the less likely it is that you're going to be one of those unconscious people. So you can work on yourself and not be frightened by the future. Be very positive about the future. I know sometimes futurists can get into, well, the ultimate, negative scenarios, our race isn't going to survive. And let's say that was true. Let's say we're not going to survive. I mean, even so, you want to do everything possible now. Now, the future isn't fixed. You want to do everything possible to your very last breath, our very last second, to create the good. It's a very beautiful thing. You never want to give up on that, no matter how many narcissists there are out there in power, no matter how many people are abusing it. I mean, even if you are the only one left, with all of this darkness, your light can light up the world. I mean, I feel that. So that's why I'm so passionate about teaching people to maintain this place in themselves and develop it. So it's strong, it's powerful. And when you falter and when you feel like you just can't go on, you take a day of rest. You regroup. If you can't, just things are too much at times. That's just how it is. And so you practice self-care and you practice self-compassion, and then the next day or the next day after that, you pick yourself up and you go towards your path. But you have to have faith in what you're doing and what your motivations are. If anything is just about money, it will lose its soul. But if it's about money and empathy and soul, then it has real power to create change. I hope you all know that.
Yeah, I think Marin Kotler, I think the social connection is something that we definitely need and will be assisting with in terms of groups and things like that with each other. And social networking, as we're talking about the social connection, we do have the app where people are connecting, but we do need that in-person piece as well. And then, as you were saying, Judith, and all futurists know, is that the future is not fixed and that it hasn't happened yet. There are multiple possible futures. And the bridge is kind of envisioning the one you want to go to, and then having more and more people beyond that vision with you and course correcting. The next question, Horry Selassie. As a highly empathetic entrepreneur, I have a major challenge around hyper-focusing on specific narrow problems which I can monetize. I often find myself driven to solve very complex challenges with my business, even when they are not the easiest business problem or most economically advantageous. Have you worked with many entrepreneur empaths who struggle with this, and how can it be overcome, managed, or work to our benefit?
Oh, that's such a great question. I love that question. And yes, I've worked with so many entrepreneur empaths who are out there learning to find that balance that you're talking about. And it's just important to keep things very simple. You know, just by nature of that question was a very complex question. And it was a very deep question. And this person has such a heart, such a heart. And how do you bring that into your business environment as an empath? And what's helpful is to have other empaths around you in the workplace, and other people who can be on the same level that you can be on in terms of, just being in a pleasant environment. So who you have around you makes a big difference in the decisions you're making and all the micro decisions you're making. I get the sense that, if you can practice more self-care or practice meditation, as a regular practice for your life so that you can take a rest, because this person wants to do good so much and has so much energy, but needs to have a little downtime in the self in order to find the balance and listen to your intuition. So I don't think it'll take much. And this particular person has so much to do, in this world, that's good. And so it comes down to self-care also as well, which I'm not sure this person is practicing. I don't know.
All right, Horry, are you practicing self-care? Share it on the side. Okay, next comment. So what are some positive and negative possibilities for the future of empathy as a global trend?
The future of empathy is positive. It gets involved in every power meeting, every government decision, every board of directors, every one who is, in positions to really create change, that empathy is part of that discussion around the table. That your purpose is to tune into each other to create a better reality, that has to be part of the vocabulary, the discussion, and if it's not, to figure out what the blocks are so that you can bring it in, because without it, there will be no change really, or the change won't be that much different from the past. And, human beings in history, they tend to repeat the same mistakes over and over again. But when you bring in empathy, it changes the playing field because you're seeing from a different place. You're not just tit for tat. It doesn't work that way. Empathy enlarges your world and the possibility, for global understanding. It might not always work, but it's the best chance you have, of getting through to somebody. And so it's essential everywhere.
So are you saying that empaths themselves, when practicing self-care, become stronger at what they do, and then people who aren't empaths can bring in empathy into their thinking, so they don't need to turn into an empath, but
No,
that adding empathy is the key component for those who are not empaths. Is
absolutely.
that, as it relates to the future,
Absolutely.
is more empathy?
The minute you try and understand where other people are coming from, even if they've done horrible things, it changes the playing field. It just changes the whole dynamic of what's going on. You might not agree with them, but you could have empathy for their suffering of what caused them to do these things. And why is that important? Because it changes everything. You're not sitting there judging, you're hoping to, understand and heal. You're hoping to understand and heal. You're not just hoping to separate and divide. So it's the empathy will lead you to that understanding, even though there are lots of frustrations on the path, even though there are lots of times you want to, just overwhelmed and tired, but you want to learn how to not overgive. So you want to learn self-care, and you want to learn how to give appropriately at the right times so that you could make a huge difference in the world, and not just have it be an analytic, intellectual decision, but have it come from here too.
Well, then this next question is perfect. It's from Teres Danko. He said, could non-empaths be also future thinkers, but in their own way, using analytical thinking, for instance?
Absolutely, but you could bring heart into your analytic thinking. The way you think about things, the way you conceptualize the world can be from a place of heart and unification and integration rather than separation. Now you could think about, how can this action I'm taking make a difference? And analyze it. Just come from your analytic self, but you also have empathy. Unless you're a narcissist, a complete full-blown narcissist, you have empathy. Everybody does. That's how we're wired. And you can develop empathy just through the awareness of this conversation, of practicing certain tools of listening. Empathic listening is what I teach people and groups of people. How are you in a meeting and have empathic listening and not just be a pushover? You're having empathic listening, but you want to try and understand where people are coming from, so you know how to speak to them. That's what's so key in conflict resolution. You need to empathically feel where they're coming from, so you know what vocabulary to use to get through to them. That is key. You have to know that. You can't do that without empathy. But as this, person said, you don't have to be an empath to have empathy. Being an empath is just someone with a lot of empathy and tends to absorb, the pain from others. And so we need to have special tools and self-care techniques to not be blown away by what's happening everywhere. But everyone who's listening, if you're not an empath, or you're not sure, but you have empathy or you want to develop it, that is such a beautiful thing. It's enough.
Yeah, and I would agree. I don't think you have to be an empath to be a big thinker or a future thinker. It's just an additional superpower tool to add to your arsenal.
That's exactly right. It's a super tool. It's like a superpower. It's something extra than what you're used to. It's something you can turn to that will help your life enormously in terms of a guiding light within. You will know what your purpose is. You will be guided as opposed to just, what should I do? And thinking it through so much your mind hurts. Reach me by my website, which is drjudithorloff.com. My email is there, and
you'll also be in the community. You're going to be posting your articles, so you can also reach her through the World Future Society.
In the World Future Society. I have a book tour. I'm traveling around. I'll be in Los Angeles, Seattle, Portland, San Francisco, New York. So you could go on my website and see where my events are, and everyone's invited to continue this dialogue. And the futurists hold a key here. I just want to say that. The futurists hold a key, to changing the world. And this could very well be a missing piece to what you're doing. And it will give you more power and more strength to do what you do. It's the ongoing dialogue. Nothing is fixed. It's an ongoing dialogue of how to make the human race more empathic and yet not overgive and not get burnt out. How do you do that? How do you day by day tune in and not catastrophize? How do you stay in the now and deal with what's in front of you? So all these are really important issues that have so much to do with how you vision the future.
Thank you so much, Dr. Orloff. I think everybody really appreciated you answering their questions and also really getting to the point of that this is a superpower. And if you are working on the future or in the future space, that this is, first of all, futurists are superpower people. And then you combine empaths to that ability, plus all of the intellectual knowledge that you accumulate, you are superhuman. In some ways, not necessarily technologically superhuman, but in terms of what you have achieved for yourself and your self-care and your self-growth and enlightenment. Is that how you would sum up this conversation here?
I think that's a beautiful summary, and just know each day you can start over again. No, this world is very challenging now, so we need your empathy more than ever to come together as a futurist group and to have each other for support, because we need the social support, and that's what you offer here. And this is where you can be yourself. This is where you can have your honest questions and visions. And it's a work in progress, how to tip the tides towards the positive, how we can work as a group and stay strong with empathy and not shut down. That's so important.
Well, the World Future Society is looking forward to an ongoing relationship with you, Judith. Thank you so much for all you've done for everybody and what you put out into the world.
You're very welcome.
All right. Thank you, guys. We'll continue this conversation. And as you saw, this video will be posted within the community. So if you missed part of it or some of it, you'll be able to see it there, as well as Judith will be posting some additional things inside of the community in article form. So I hope you enjoy all of that. And then hopefully we'll be able to start doing some courses as it relates to strengthening your empathy, your empath coping skills, or anything on that level. So all of that will come in the community, and we'll announce it there. And that is at worldfuture.org. If you're not in there, it is free to join. Okay. Thank you so much, Judith. It was, again, great to have you.
Thank you.
All right.